super thin skin, held up longer than I was wanting to.
Welcome to Center Stage, the documentary podcast. Each week, our group of intrepid researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, looking for that one artist to take center stage. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one artist. Once that is settled, we invite that artist into Thunderlove Studio to chat with your host Keith R. Higgins. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Center Stage is simple: to make sure the recorded work of artists remains, or in some cases lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul. You should be labeled with a skull and a crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul.
We can argue what band is truly ground zero for the modern Americana movement. For me, that artist has always been Lone Justice. They may not have been the first, but they were the first to bring this unique sound to a wider audience. It's safe to say that Lone Justice cast a very long shadow. And with the release of Viva Lone Justice, they stand at the precipice of reaching an even larger audience. For reasons they each explain, this may not be a new album. You can safely consider it a new to you album. With the help of Fire Records, we were able to arrange interviews with the three surviving members of Lone Justice: Maria McKee, Ryan Hedgecock, and Marvin Etzioni. Each were gracious with their time and their stories about the legacy of the band. Broken into three separate interviews, what follows is my conversation with lead singer Maria McKee. I hope you enjoy it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this.
Of course. Thank you.
I have to tell you, the record's really, really great. I'm sure I'm not the only one telling you that, but wow.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I was kind of flabbergasted the first time I heard it, slightly.
Yeah? Tell us how that came to be.
Well, after Don Heffington passed away, Marvin and I were hanging out quite a bit to sort of work through it, process it. We would meet maybe once every 2 weeks. And go for a walk and eat, get some food. And one of those times, he just said, "Oh, I found these tapes that we did at my house with Don during the recording of Sin to Get Saved." It was around that time, and it's you and me and Don, and Tammy joins in on fiddle. And he goes, "They're really, really fun. And I think we should put them out." And I said, "Great." And he goes, "Do you want it to be like a Maria McKee release?" And I said, I've kind of moved on from the super hillbilly sounds. Like my last solo record was a really Baroque Anglophile chamber pop. It's, romantic poetry, magnum opus.
Oh.
So like, I don't know if it would fit into my sort of vocabulary at this time to release a country record, but why don't we make an LJ record? And I said, Ryan's not on it, but everyone else is on it. So let's just get Ryan on it. And let's you can overdub some guitars or whatever. And he said, "Great, I'm going to talk to Ryan." And it turned out that they ended up producing it. And I didn't hear it until it was done. Sequenced, mixed, not mastered yet, but like pretty much done.
Wow.
And he just had me go over, we went to our friend Willie Aaron. We went to his house for dinner, and then he sat me down and he gave me a notebook and a pen in case I had any notes. And he pressed play, and I just from the minute he pressed play, I was just like completely excited by it. I just had so much fun that first listen. I just couldn't get over how great it was.
Well, as a fan, I can tell you I had the same amount of fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of LJ folks were just like, oh my, this is wow,
It seems like it's a fully realized Lone Justice record. And what I mean by that is you've covered, traditional songs, country songs, some hillbilly to rock to punk. It seems to encapsulate everything that the band was.
Yeah, I mean, if we had made an album that was a love letter to our influences, because there's only one original song on the whole album. And, the Lone Justice songs were good, so we were good songwriters too. So, I the fact that it's a covers album kind of makes me go, well, is it a really important Lone Justice record? Can it be a really important Lone Justice record if there's only one original song? But there's something about the passion that we have for that type of music, from punk to country to hillbilly to gospel, that comes through, that makes it kind of like, well, yeah, it kind of is, it kind of.
Well, absolutely.
In the way that sort of like, Grievous Angel was a lot of cover songs, but that was a really important alt country or, country rock record too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Those early days when you were finding your sound, was there a crystallizing moment when you guys were like, oh, that's it, we nailed it, that's the sound we want? Or was it a slow evolution and like, okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Or was it an aha moment, I suppose, is the colloquial term?
I kind of feel like for me, when we would do Rattlesnake Mama, that was kind of like, okay, we're sort of like wrenching the sky open here and letting something come down.
I'm a rattlesnake mama from sunny Tennessee. I'm a rattlesnake mama, I'm from Tennessee. When you hear me rattle, better get out on your knees.
I mean, when we would do it live and it was really kicking and I was really like losing my shit, it kind of felt like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is it. And it came from like punk rock and the energy of punk rock and Ryan and I just really getting into early music, like hardcore fans.
Early music. What do you mean?
Yeah,
early
like
music?
hillbilly, bluegrass, Cajun, gospel, blues. I just really, really obsessively just devouring it.
When I spoke to Marvin, we talked about the sequencing a little bit because you open with "You Possess Me," which is a beautiful vocal on that. That's just a beautiful song. And to Jenny Jenkins, to Rattlesnake Mama, to the undertones, to the gospel influenced "Wade in the Water," it almost seems like it's got like a live performance vibe to it, like almost like that's what I would want to hear live,
Well, it was kind of a field recording, so it was pretty much just us jamming.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not "You Possess Me." Like some of the songs were later. Like "You Possess Me" was later. I can't remember when, but I think it was in the 2000s sometime. Jenny Jenkins, Ryan and I did around 15 years ago. So some of the stuff was later, but the stuff that was done during Syndicate Saved, like around 92 or 3, was, I think Skull and Crossbones, Teenage Kicks, Wade in the Water, I Will Always Love You, Sister Anne. Like, you can kind of tell a little bit the difference. And those were kind of like those were just kind of like us jamming in the living room, like field recording kind of style.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
You guys, Lone Justice had a relatively short lifespan, but your impact has been incredibly lasting. How do you reflect on that today, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like the second Lone Justice album, which is not a Lone Justice album, nobody from the original band is on it. I think Ryan did a little guitar early on, but then he left. That I look at as kind of like the kind of a cloaked Maria McKee record.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, that record in like Europe and the UK seems to be more impactful and more important. I don't know why. Whereas the first actual Lone Justice record, the one on Geffen that Jimmy Iovine produced, the first, album, is the one that is really people feel is more important here and more important to the Americana sort of pioneer influence. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it was lightning in a bottle. But that first album is unique because it's unique to what Lone Justice was, because it's really kind of going more into like heartland rock type stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not full. It's not like it's not really a country punk record. Whereas we were in the beginning, we were really like a country punk band. And it's because I mean, songs like After the Flood, Pass It On, like all of that was really kind of me kind of going, oh, I sort of do want to be the female Bruce Springsteen.
Well, I have to tell you candidly, that first Lone Justice record is the Desert Island album for me. Has been for years. Yeah. And I said that to both Ryan and Marvin. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I think it's a phenomenal record.
Well, I think it's one of Marvin's Desert Island.
Yeah, good.
He's such a huge Lone Justice fan. Yeah, but I mean, that album was fun. It was, it was fun to make in some ways and really harrowing in other ways. Because we were like kids and we were brought to New York, and Jimmy Iovine and everybody in the big record label, and and then like, I don't know, somehow Bob Dylan was there, and Ron Wood and all these people, and then like Tom Petty's songs and Steve Van Zandt, and it was just like, whoa, it was a lot.
I would imagine that is a lot. That's a lot for young guys and ladies.
But I mean, it was a lot from the beginning. It was bananas. I mean, I don't even understand it. Like, it was so crazy. Like, Dolly Parton came to one of our first gigs. Like, she doesn't go out to LA clubs and go to gigs, but we had this A&R person who was like, she was like a celebrity in her own right, Carol Childs, and she was like besties with Dolly. And she's like, you got to come see this little country singing person. And Dolly truly became a fan that night, and she's still a fan, and she's amazing, and then Emmy Lou showed up at another gig, and then Linda basically discovered me, like she was at some gig that we did out in the middle of nowhere in the valley. And I went in to put my lipstick on in the bathroom, and she was there. And I learned to sing to Heart Like a Wheel, and well, it's one of the records that I learned to sing to. There were many, but that one was huge. And it was, huge for me in my teens, and I was still in my teens. And so I was like, okay, I really can't blow it because Linda's here. And then she went and told David about us.
Jeez.
Geffen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and when we would play the Palomino, like David Byrne showed up one night and Stevie Nicks showed up another night. So it was just like, it was mayhem from the beginning, and I don't fully understand it. I think it was a partly of Jimmy Iovine being involved and kind of getting everyone there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was also because we had a lot of energy and the shows were fun. And I was kind of a firecracker on stage, and we were young, and And when I settled down and really sang, I kind of had the goods. And I think, I
Sure.
think it just, or maybe it was just the time, it was just the time that when it was still kind of like not quite the 60s and 70s when everybody was hanging out in Laurel Canyon and everyone knew each other, like the early days of Asylum or whatever.
Right.
Not quite that, but not what it is now, where nobody's really connected anymore. Although my goddaughter is a musician and she's one of those people who knows everybody.
Oh,
And there's a lot of musicians who know each other and help each other. But, it was, kind of, yeah, it was, I don't know. It was a crazy time. We had a lot of pressure on us and we were super young.
mm-hmm. Yeah, you were. And I want to talk about the energy. The energy you have on stage was phenomenal. And I
You
always
mean had?
had, yeah, yeah. I always point people, there's the Ritz performance from, I think that would have been 86. That's up on YouTube. And people are like,
Yeah.
oh, I love Lone Justice. I'm like, oh, you got to look at this. They're like, oh my God.
That's funny because that was after the band broke up, It was,
Really?
I know. You know what? I'm
No.
thinking of that. We did 2 Ritzes. We did one for the first
Right.
LJ, where I did Janis Joplin and then, but I was thinking of the one that was filmed, which was for like release,
Oh, okay.
which was around Shelter, which
Which is when I actually got a chance to see you
okay.
on the Shelter tour. It was the old Brendan Byrne Arena. You were playing with U2. And
Yeah, the Brendan Byrne. I remember that.
yep. I unfortunately remember nothing about it because I was under the influence of a few chemicals.
Oh, wow. So you got loaded at a U2 show? That's kind of wild because I always think of like people going to their shows and being super Christian and like,
Oh, no.
I wouldn't have thought that a U2 show would be where you would go and drop E or something. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I dropped acid that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
wow. Okay. Good for you. That's awesome.
The only thing I remember is they played Trip Through Your Wire twice. That's it.
That's such a great song.
Oh, it really is.
I
Absolutely.
love that song. That's one of my favorite U2 songs.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I feel like I used to come out to watch them do that one because I loved it so much.
I want to ask about your vocal influences. Besides,
They're pretty evident, really, when you listen to back to the stuff.
well, for those folks that it isn't so evident, it's Linda Ronstadt, I assume, Emmylou Harris,
Yeah.
Dolly
Oh.
Parton.
Yeah, but and this is why I always have imposter syndrome. I was on my way to New York to study musical theater when my brother intercepted me and put a band together for me and started writing kind of country songs for me.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember when I quit the theater department at Beverly Hills High, the head of the theater department, John Ingle, who was a character actor and TV actor and stuff, he literally almost cried and begged me to stay. He was like, you could launch a theater career here because it's Hollywood and everybody's kid goes to this school. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to pursue rock and roll.
Nice.
And, I don't regret it, but I learned how to sing really listening to a lot of theater stuff. Angela Lansbury and Bernadette Peters and Patti LuPone and Judy Garland was my first favorite singer, and Bette Midler. And then when I became a teen, I had a best friend who's still my best friend, one of my best friends. And we got into we kind of were sort of mods together. And we got into Tamla Motown, soul, Stax, Northern Soul, girl groups, Phil Spector. And then that was huge for me, all of that.
Wow.
And then my other first favorite singer when I was a teen was Donna Summer. And you can kind of tell when you listen to her and you listen to me, you can kind of hear how I copy her. I think a lot. actually.
I'm going to have to
And-
go back and revisit that.
Yeah, especially Bad Girls, like a song like My Baby Understands, which is a ballad. And then when I was 15, my friend Deirdre from junior high, she used to go to gigs and like new wave gigs and stuff. And she said, let's go to the Whiskey and see Rachel Sweet. And I'm like, who's that? And she goes, oh my God, she's so cute. She has a song on K-Rock, What's in the Cuckoo Clock. And so I got her record. My mom didn't let me go to the gig, but I got her record. And she was a huge influence on me, Rachel Sweet. That first album, Fooling Around, when I was 15. And it's kind of a Lone Justice record in a way. It was put out by Stiff, and it was, I think, produced and recorded in England. She does like the Elvis Costello country songs. She does girl group songs. She does like soul. She does country. She does new wave and punk. And she kind of has like a girl group voice. That was a huge influence on me, that album and her.
Fooling Around by Rachel Sweet. I just made a note of it. Yeah.
I mean, she became more popular because she did the theme song for Hairspray, the movie, the John Waters movie, the original one.
Yep.
She kind of had like a boppy baby voice, sort of like Cyndi Lauper could do that voice too, and I loved that about her. And she was so cute too. She was like really young. And I just worshipped her. I wanted to be her. I wanted to be her so bad. And I think she was from like the Midwest, like Ohio or something.
Yes, Midwest. I'm from Ohio. That's why I chuckled.
Oh, okay.
The songs. One song in particular is a personal favorite of mine, and that's Skull and Crossbones.
Yeah,
Where did-
rockabilly. 'Cause we were
Rockabilly?
obsessed with rockabilly. Yeah, because after punk in LA, rockabilly became hugely popular. So the Mask was the big. I mean, there were a lot of punk bands like the Starwood, and obviously the ones down in Chinatown, Madame Wong's and Hong Kong Cafe, and all of those places. But the one that was the most sort of beloved and important was the Mask. And so when the Mask closed up, the next sort of place was in the early 80s was the Cathay de Grand, which was like deep in the heart of Hollywood. And I used to go there almost every night. Like I was obsessed with the place. I was really young, but I would find a way to get there. And so there was like a rockabilly scene. And there was in particular a band that I was really obsessed with. And I was like their little fan. I would go, in fact, I dated the bass player and I would go to every gig and I was like a groupie. And they were called the Red Devils. And they went on later to become a blues band that performed in the 90s. They were the house band at the King Club, I think, on La Brea. But in the early days, like 81, 82, they were a rockabilly band with a girl singer named Emmy. Her name was Emily, but she married the guitar player, David Lee. And so she became Emmy Lee. And she was really stunningly beautiful. And she dressed like out of like central casting 1950s, perfect 1950s, like square dancing dresses with like knee-high Chippewa motorcycle boots. And she had like a perfect Marcel wave. Her hair was like really always set, and her makeup was flawless. And she played a Charlie Christian, like a 1930s Charlie Christian guitar.
Wow.
And and it was like stand-up bass. And then David Lee was really influenced by Billy Zoom. So he played the same silver Gretsch and kind of tried to copy him a little bit. But it was cool because he was a stan, and he would kind of stand on stage and grin like Billy Zoom used to. And Billy ended up producing them. So they were like my first favorite LA band. Well, no, Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pinks was my first favorite LA band. And then that was kind of how I started singing, because he got me up on stage with him at the cafe. So the Red Devils, I think it was the Red Devils I don't know, but I think they were the ones who did Skull and Crossbones originally. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like possibly they were the ones that pulled it out of the archives and started doing it on stage.
Interesting.
And I don't know why I did like a rockabilly revival like 10 years later when we were doing these recordings, because it was 92 and the Red Devils were gigging around in like 81, 82. But I don't know. For some reason, I decided I wanted to do it back then. Because I was like, when Marvin played me the record and I heard Skull and Crossbones, I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about this song. You know? So it was a really great surprise for me. And it's kind of one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Mine too.
But if you'll excuse me now.
Oh? Why?
Why, I'd like to go up to my room for a moment.
To call up that girlfriend of yours again? Sit down.
Now, I want to ask you about Alabama Baby. I had done a little research on this. Well, not a little. I dug around as much as I could, and it had come up on the internet, so we know it's true, but it had come up that it was done by the Andrews Sisters.
I had no idea.
I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a copy of it. So I'm just curious if that was a reference for you at all.
No, but I loved when I was really little and I was like a real weird kid and I was obsessed with everything 30s, 40s, all the movies from the 30s and 40s and the Little Rascals. And I basically wanted to live in the 30s and 40s. And I was, Andrew's Sisters obsessed, like anything Fred and Ginger, all of that, Judy, anything. But I had never heard them do that song. But I think we got it from the Blue Sky Boys, I think.
Okay.
Who were like a bluegrass band that recorded around the same time as the Andrews Sisters.
Okay.
30s, 40s, 50s, like probably. I think that's where I got it from, but I don't remember. It's a long time ago.
Talk about your daddy, boys, I got one. He's my Alabama baby, and he's so much fun. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lordy, that boy can love. He does the shimmy in the daytime, the boogie at night. He's my Alabama baby, and he does it right. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lord, that boy can love. Yeah. Well, we boogied last night and the night before. My Alabama baby wants more and more. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lord, that boy can love. Shake it, Marvin.
Yeah.
Sweetheart, it's okay. It's okay. Come here. Sweetheart, it's okay. It's okay. If she hears anything like a firework, sorry, it's my dog.
It's okay.
If she hears anything like a firework, she becomes very upset. Sweetheart, you're a good girl. In fact, I booked us into the Bel Air Hotel on New Year's Eve just in case.
Oh,
Because
nice.
they said it's quiet in the canyon.
You're a big dog advocate.
Yes, I am. And greyhounds, X racers in particular.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
just lost my Pitty a couple of months ago.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it was
Oh,
heartbreaking, but
there's nothing worse.
No,
Nothing worse.
that's the journey. It's the contract we make, right? It's like I know I'm going to give you the best life that I can. And
I
hope
know you're gonna break my freaking heart.
Yep. I just got goosebumps. Yep.
hmm hmm I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I've lost everybody, my mom, my dad, my brother, friends, and when my last greyhound passed away, I didn't think I was going to survive it. Like
Yeah.
I've never, like, I was wandering around the house, like howling, my husband would have to like make me chamomile tea and give me like beta blockers to calm me down. And, and he just kept saying to me over and over again, you've got to get another dog. You've got to get, and it's the only way you're going to heal from this. And I was like, never again. There will be nobody like her. How could there ever be anybody like her? And I'm never going to go through this again. And I'm never going to put myself through this again. And then I was just on Instagram and I saw the Greyhound adoption group page and I was like, don't swipe. Because it was like, here's our new retirees. They just come off the track. And I was like, don't look. And then I just started swiping and I see these little heads and I was like, uh-oh. And then I just emailed the president of Grey Save here, who's the adoption group. And I said, well, I lost my Enith Harmon. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then she's like, come down to the picnic and meet some new kids or whatever. Aww. And then she immediately started matching me. She just started texting me and asking me questions like, are they allowed on the furniture? Are they going to fly with you? Are they going to be an only? And I just was like, okay, I guess she's making a match.
and did she?
Yeah. And literally, I mean, she matched me with Enith Harmon and she's really good. And I mean, and literally a month later, I had Lizzie. And the pain started to go away. I still have moments where it's really hard, but it's not like it was. I mean, it's just, you don't have time because once you get a new guy, it's all about them,
Yeah. I find peace in knowing there's nothing I could have done. He had inoperable cancer. There was literally nothing I could have done.
Yeah, same.
So there's some peace there, but
yeah.
And I know one day I'll get another dog, but that pain is that goes deep.
There's nothing worse.
Deep. Yeah. So, but I know I'll do it again.
Good. I hope you do.
Oh, I absolutely will. And I never thought in my lifetime that I'd own a pit bull, but they're
really
wonderful.
Sweet.
They're the sweetest.
My husband grew up with pits, and when I lived part-time in Ireland, the family I was with over there had what they call a Staffordshire Terrier, which are like pits.
Mm-hmm.
Precious angel of a dog.
They're beautiful. They're funny as all get out.
Yeah, they really are.
So much personality. But I want to ask you. I listened to your short story Charcoal.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
interesting.
And I really enjoyed it. And I'm curious if fiction is something that you're interested in working more on.
I'm not mulling over fiction, but I every once in a while, I think, because I'm a huge nerd. Okay. So like people don't expect this of me because I'm kind of a fancy lady and I have some erudition and I'm a bit of a dilettante. But then they find out that I'm like obsessed with Star Trek, obsessed with Star Wars, obsessed with the Twilight Zone, obsessed with like genre movies and horror. All Halloween, all month long, I've been on my Instagram listing my favorite horror movies and chatting with my followers about horror movies. Like I'm a total nerd. So sometimes I think I wouldn't be utterly surprised if I didn't write something that was like fantasy, sci-fi, or horror. Or when I say horror, I don't mean Friday the 13th. I mean, like, I love like very haunting, sad, beautiful, like
a gothic type horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just picked up a book the other day that was like, it labeled itself as Midwestern noir. I'm like, all right, I'll go in on this.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I on the books for me right now is to tackle sort of something like a memoir-ish kind of thing.
Oh.
And I did sort of touch ground a little bit. I did sort of write a little bit on that tiny bit, and I'm mulling it over and thinking about it. It's not going to be like a music business memoir, but it's going to be more about my family and LA. And, because my roots here are like millennial. Like my great grandmother was First Nations LA County, like Tongva Nation, which is the Gabrielino tribe, which are the caretakers of the LA County Basin. So like, that's one of the reasons why I can't move, because my roots here are like thousands of years deep. So I have like a lot of personal history of family and stuff that I want to delve into about LA, and just kind of just other stuff too, like interesting stuff and that's happened to me, and some spirituality. I don't know what it's going to look like. I love Joan Didion. I love the way she writes about the city in California. I don't know what it's going to be. And then my goddaughter is always like, well, you need to make music to accompany. You need to make like autobiographical, like story record to go along with it that tells these stories, the stories that you tell me about your family. If you can put them to music, I think would be really powerful. So I don't know, but I have really bad ADHD and a lot of procrastination issues.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so I will make a song cycle or something conceptual every 25 years. So I don't know if I have that much time now. So it's going to have to be quicker than that. Because I made Life is Sweet, which was my last song cycle. And then I made La Vita Nuova 5 years ago. And that was like 25-year gap.
Oof.
I mean, I made albums in between, but they weren't like conceptual pieces. They were more kind of piecing together old demos and cover songs and writing with my husband. And, so I don't know. But, sometimes I'm like, I'm good. I've done it, and the music business is so weird. It's like you put something out and it just disappears, So
How do you mean?
Well, like for instance, I made the album of my career 5 years ago. Like I'm more proud of it than anything I've ever done. It nearly killed me to make it. I mean, I set an academic task for myself to write like line poetry and romance poetry and reading Dante and reading Swinburne and reading Keats and Tennyson and and like just like had like this death in Venice like vision of youth that almost killed me, and catapulted me into this like midlife crisis record that was really intense, and it was also like a psychic awakening, and it was really hard to write, and it's really lyrical. It was really hard to sing, and I composed all the strings and horns for like a 19-piece orchestra. And I don't read music. So I had to do it all on the keyboard. And it took months and months and months.
Oof.
And, I think it's like the best thing I've ever done. And also the reviews were kind of in agreement a little bit in that regard. Not here. The only thing I got was a pitchfork, which was really nice. But in the UK, Europe, France, Scandinavia, like really, really beautiful academic pieces on the album, especially in France. Like people really appreciated it. It was important to a lot of people who like my music. And then COVID happened. Practically the week the album came out. And I was in London and it locked down.
Oh.
And I'm seeing the reviews come in every day. The PR people are sending me this review, that review, Financial Times, Forbes, Guardian, whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, people like it, but now what? And
Right.
I was supposed to do this gig in London and, and I was really excited about it. And then we had to cancel it. And then I was thinking I would tour it a little bit. I don't really tour anymore, but like any kind of touring I might have done for it, that wasn't going to happen.
Oh.
So it just kind of, okay. And then I came back here and, now the other day, I don't know what compelled me. The weirdest thing happened, but like Chris and the Queens, I don't know if you know Chris and the Queens, they're like they're like a French punk band. They're beloved. And they put a record out practically the same week as my album La Vita Nuova.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called La Vita Nuova. And it was a total coincidence.
What?
And yeah, and it's a reference to Dante's book, La Vita Nuova.
Okay.
And my goddaughter had done some gigs with Chris and the Queens. And I asked her about it. because she knows Chris. I was like, what is going on? So the total coincidence, what is going on? And she just said, well, no, she just was really, I remember her talking to me about the concept for the album and Dante and everything. So it's just a wild, one of those weird, wild things where it just happened, And so I thought, because I'm really proud of this album. I really think it's great, blah, 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 probably my best work. So I was Googling something, I don't remember. And I was like, oh, I wonder what happens if you Google La Vita Nuova. So I Googled it, and then the Dante stuff comes up. But then the first thing that comes up is the Chris and the Queens album. And it's basically all you see.
Oh, man.
So it's like, it's not even really, if you continue down a little bit, then you see, some reviews of my record or whatever. But I'm like, okay, so why even make music? Why even make a record? Why work so hard? Why do that? Why lock myself into a room and write, classical compositions for strings and horns and everything else? And I remember it was a really hot summer. I don't have air conditioning. And I was just sweating in my office, writing these string lines and these horn lines. And I had an infestation of book lice, which are these little tiny bugs that fly around the computer and go onto the computer screen and go onto the keyboard. And it was so creepy. Talk about sci-fi or creep show or whatever. When who is it? I can't remember the actor, but that one episode in Creep Show where he's covered in roaches. I mean, It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that, but these little tiny bugs were everywhere. And I was just like, I don't care. I wouldn't even brush them off because I was so engrossed in writing these strings, And I'm like, why put myself through that again when nobody cares and there's no music business,
That's the truth.
And it's sort of like, I'm kind of enjoying retirement. I sort of like just not having any pressure and not really doing anything, but just kind of taking care of my dog, taking care of myself, going to therapy, going for walks, doing my Pilates, taking care of my goddaughter who lives in London, but we still talk constantly. She's really close. She comes to see me, and these are the most important things in my life, and I don't know if that I want to interrupt it with the torture of being an artist.
Oh, that's interesting. That's fair enough, though. That's fair. Of course, it does beg the question. I've asked everybody, and based on this conversation right now, I know the answer, but I would be remiss for anyone listening if I didn't ask. Will you do any live performances behind this Lone Justice record?
I mean, I hate, and I feel really bad in a way because the record company did sort of promote this as a reunion, which I thought was a little bit naughty. Because it got people's hopes up,
Yeah.
And it's not a new Lone Justice record. I mean, it is in that nobody's heard it.
Yes.
But it was recorded piecemeal over the last 25, 30 years. So it's sort of like, I mean, the only reunion really is me and Ryan and Marvin hang out and we love each other and we'll always be family. They'll always be my brothers, but I don't see doing anything like that.
I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fair. But I know that was one question I got from a few people.
Yeah, a lot of people want to know, but I think people kind of stopped asking because they figure it's also Don being gone and stuff, it's sort of like, and it's, it's weird for me as well, because the only Lone Justice songs I do in my solo shows are the ones from the second album. So I do You Are the Light sometimes.
Okay.
So I don't even know if, and that's not even really a Lone Justice record because it's not Marvin and Ryan and Don,
Right.
Right. So it's hard to know where the Lone Justice thing fits into my sort of grown-up career. But apart from, I love this record,
Oh, for sure. And speaking of love, on the topic of love, I think it's universal. Everyone loves. I Will Always Love You. Your interpretation on that is just a banger, as the kids are wont to say.
Gosh, it's so funny when I'd completely forgotten that I'd recorded it.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way, so I'll go. But I know I'll think of you every step of the way. I will always love you. I will always love you. Bittersweet memories, that's all I am taking with me. Goodbye, please don't cry. We both know I'm not what you need. And I will always love you. I will
And so when Marvin played me the album and that came on, I was like, oh, no, we don't. No, we don't. I was like, are you kidding me? We can't release this. Are you kidding me? No. And he's like, just listen. And I thought, oh, wow, that's really audacious. Like, talk about punk rock, like to cover that song. That's really like bratty. Like, that's really bratty. But then I thought to myself, here I am. I'm 60 years old. What do I care? The only person's opinion I care about in regards to me covering I Will Always Love You is Dolly's. And I know she'll love it. So what do I care? I don't care. Because I know Dolly's going to love it. And then she's the only opinion that matters to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope you find some peace in knowing that everyone that I know has heard it loves it.
Okay, good. So more than just Dolly.
There's one live song on the record.
Yeah, that one I can't listen to. My voice is a little too hysterical.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's a little bit like when I hear that, I kind of go, oh, turn it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair
It's
enough.
a little frenetic and a little squeaky for me. But that's the only one that's not my favorite. Everything else I love. Love.
Yeah. There's nary a bad song on here.
Well, it's interesting because I, for whatever reason, because I've grown kind of away from making country music and listening to it all the time. In fact, when I'm relaxing, like going for a long walk, I listen to a lot of disco and 70s R&B and 80s R&B. Like that's the music that I love. now to just relax to or whatever, and classical music and stuff like that. But I had not seen the Ken Burns country doc.
Oh my God.
So I hadn't seen it. And my husband was like, when he started watching it, he was just like, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm telling you, just take the time, just do it. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, but it was about maybe a year and a half or a year ago. I watched it and I was just completely riveted. And the thing that made me the most excited about it was I knew every song and I was singing along and the lyrics came back to me. And it was because of all that time that Ryan and I had spent devouring the encyclopedia of early music and country and bluegrass and hillbilly and all that, Jimmy Rogers and Hank Williams and all the, Nashville sound, George Jones and Waylon and, the Billy Sherrill stuff, and just knew every song. And the other thing that obviously the thing is beautifully made and incredible.
Of course.
Is the authenticity of every artist that was a part of it, that was reflected in the show, every single one, and how their lives were their music and their music was their lives. And again, I didn't want to make it about me, but I'm an egotistical artist. I'm like, I'm like, how dare I ever even try to do this, to make this music, to be a part of this pantheon of people? And how is it that I'm a talking head in a video in the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum exhibit on the country rock scene in LA? Like, how am I allowed? Like, how did that happen? I grew up in freaking Beverly Hills. I went to Beverly High. I was a theater major. Lone Justice was almost like a theater piece for me. I was like acting. I'm not a hillbilly, and I just was flooded with this like shame of like, we're not worthy, like literally, seriously, like, and I started to kind of make peace with it in ways that were unusual. Like, for instance, my grandmother, who partly raised me, whose home I live in, was one of 17 kids, the daughter of a homesteader. Her mom was First Nations and colonial Spanish. She was the eldest. She took, they lived in the hills in California in Ritchie Canyon. My grandfather, they used to call him, my great grandfather, they used to call him the professor because he was the proprietor of this mineral spring. And he got all this knowledge from the local tribe who bottled the water and helped him figure out what was in it. And then he sent it off to like this really fancy chemist in Rhode Island to have the minerals analyzed. And apparently it was really potent stuff. And it actually is very healing. And so he would go around in a wagon to the Colton County Fair and all the county fairs as like a medicine showman selling this water. But he believed in it, and it really did have healing properties. And my grandmother used to give me the minerals when I was a kid. And, she was in a band with her brothers and sisters, and they would perform in the back of this wagon, and so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I am kind of country. And then, when I did Dwight Yoakam's show on Sirius, and we sat for like 3 hours and talked about California country and the Bakersfield Sound and Rose Maddox and the sharecroppers coming to California, barefoot, and, and also we talked about the Hollywood sound, the country sound in Hollywood, and Ricky Nelson, who was also a Beverly Hills kid who invented rockabilly pop. So I'm like, okay, I started to feel a little bit better about being a part of like, country music, sort of whatever, the pantheon of country music. And so then when it was time to listen to this record and, Marvin pressed play, I was like, oh, okay, I think it's all right.
Oh, for sure. You were definitely a part of that tapestry.
So it was like it took a lot for me to get here and to not feel like an asshole who was appropriating something. but I was also raised in born again church and speaking in tongues and getting knocked down on the Holy Ghost. And
Wait, what?
you know,
Really?
hmm
That stuff has always intrigued me.
Yeah, because my parents joined a charismatic church when I was a kid, and first it was a Southern Baptist church locally that was really old fashioned, where I was baptized in a tank by a pastor from Iowa in fishing waders, at 8 years old. So, and that was really old timey, and we did all the old timey hymns, and that was in the 70s, and they had like potlucks, and then my parents joined a sort of hippie charismatic church. And there were a lot of Bible studies around Beverly Hills, and it was kind of like a cult. But we would also go to like the Black churches, and my mom had like a prayer group with all these Black ladies that were prayer ladies, and they brought down the Holy Ghost on me and gave me my tongues language. And and we would go to like Crenshaw Christian Center and stuff, and they would have like people come in from out of town and do like like kind of like revival type church stuff, and you would always go up to get the Holy Ghost, and it would knock you over, stuff like that. And so my dad was doing volunteer work at a Baptist rescue mission downtown, and it was like daddy at work day, and I don't know, I ended up down there with him in Skid Row, and it was a really old timey mission, like probably from the 30s, and it still had these Turner Burn murals on the walls, and that was where the concept of soap, soup, and salvation came from. So I don't know, it's LA is a really interesting place. There's a lot of cultures here, a lot of mix of stuff, and my family is really interesting. They've been here a long time. And, so in some ways I kind of do have a little bit of a gothic country kind of shadow in the back of who I am as a sort of, fancy retiree.
Now, was there any sort of snake wrestling going on?
No snake stuff. No
Oh, okay.
snake stuff, but some exorcism stuff. In fact, I was definitely, they tried to cast him out of me. They did when I was young, really young, like 14. Because I was so charismatic and energetic and had a lot of curiosity, and I would always tell my mom everything, and and also mention to her that I was attracted to a girl at school. And so then that turned into like not conversion therapy, but that was definitely one of the demons that got brought up in the prayer group that day when they were trying to cast him out of me.
Is that something that's so important to you, religion? Or spirituality?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself religious because of what religion represents.
Right.
But it's my spiritual life is extraordinarily complicated. I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but I practice a lot of varying spiritual sort of ritual stuff regularly. So I was on my way to becoming an atheist because my husband's an existentialist. He's not an atheist. He's quite devout in some ways, but I was kind of feeling like there's nothing. It's blackness when you die. It's all random. It's all chaos. There's no meaning. There's no higher power. And I had a psychic awakening, and I couldn't refute what happened to me. And it was profound. And my whole life changed. And I started studying, I started practicing. I started studying the occult. I started studying esotericism, Western mystery school stuff, Hermeticism, Hermetic Kabbalah. I got a mentor who's an extraordinary teacher here in LA. I became sort of an initiate of her lodge. It weirdly, studying the occult and studying magic got me back into Christianity.
Okay.
I started speaking in tongues again and using it in my magic work. I use a talking board every day of my life. It's part of my spiritual guidance. My guides, my angels, my dad, my ancestors all communicate with me on a talking board, including Jesus Christ.
Oh, wow.
So it's, and I'm also a medium.
Wow.
So it's, my spiritual life is pretty rich. I'm very lazy in my studies. I tried to be a really good student, but because of my ADHD and because of all these things, I tend to be a little bit lazy when it comes to study. But I want to get back to it because the teacher that I was studying under has a really beautiful place here in LA where they have constantly having classes and lectures and groups. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could go every day. It's called 22 Teachings, and you could go every day and go to a class or have a lecture or, and so it's here for me. I just need to get back on the broomstick.
Speaking of that, we interviewed Orinda Fink a while back, and she just released a book. She was part of Azure Ray, make sure I pronounce it correctly, Azure Ray. And her book is called The Witch's Daughter. It's not a rock and roll memoir. It's all about how she grew up in the South in the home of a witch. Mm-hmm. And her own spiritual journey towards, and how that entangled in her life. It's a very, very fascinating story.
Well, I mean, my mother's side is what I have a cunning bloodline, which is on my mother's side going back. And I traced it all the way on Ancestry. I traced my mother's side all the way back to Ipswich, England in the 1640s. They left and came to New England. Mm-hmm. And around the 1640 in Ipswich, around that area of England was right around the time of the Bury St. Edmunds witch trials, which was kind of like the Salem witch trials of the UK, Witchmaster General. And those are all stories about the Bury St. Edmunds witch trials. So what it looks like is my ancestors left around that time and came to New England. So it was kind of like, we got to get out of here, And, my grandmother was into the occult, and that's my mother's mother. And then my mom was a charismatic Christian who did, I believe that a lot of the stuff that's practiced in the charismatic Christian church is pre-Christian magic, which is ancestral magic. So speaking in tongues, the laying on of hands, prophecy, slaying people in the spirit, all of that stuff is just, it's all the same stuff. It's just the Protestant church got a hold of it and turned it into a charismatic Christian. But it's magic. It's all the same stuff. It's channeling, the ancestors and the basic thought forms that, make us faithful and make us practice in a spiritual way and pray and whatever you want to call it, But to me, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Now we're inching up on an hour. I have one last question for you, Maria. We have a Substack following. I have a Substack newsletter, and we have a following. And about a month ago, somebody asked what we're listening to, and I'm like, I'm listening to a lot of Lone Justice. And a number of people are like, I love Lone Justice. I love Lone Justice. And I said, well, I'm trying to arrange an interview with, Marvin, Ryan, and Maria. If you have a question, let me know. I'd be happy to ask it. And one guy wrote back with a question. So with your permission, I'd like to ask you that question.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Okay. Question. Do you think things would have been different artistically and commercially if the four of you had stayed together between the first and second album?
Okay, so do I think things would have been what if we'd stayed together?
Different? Artistically and commercially.
If we'd stayed together?
Yeah, if you'd stayed together.
I mean, it's hard to answer that because there's no way we were going to stay together.
Yeah.
Because Marvin was so unhappy with the way he was treated by the record company, etc. It was like they didn't even want him to write with me anymore because they wanted me to branch out and write with bigger songwriters.
Oof.
You know, and I think Ryan felt like the project was pretty much taken away from him because it was really, he was the one who called me and said, "Hey, do you want to put a band together?" Do you know what I mean? So it was like, he was the guy that made the phone call to me to put the band together. And he was kind of being phased out. And so it's hard to know. I mean, because I don't think we would have been able to stay together. It was just one of those things. We were just torn apart.
Yeah.
You know?
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I sort of think of the VOT tapes, which is a demo that was released several years ago. I tend to think the VOT tapes as the first Lone Justice record, really, and the Gaffin Lone Justice record being like the second Lone Justice record, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense.
And then this one is the third one.
And everything's better on a third record. I have a third album theory.
Oh, interesting.
And this just cements it.
Well, my third solo album is one of my favorite solo albums. So
it's the rules of three.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, Maria, I won't take up any more of your time. We're at an hour. I thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you. And
it was lovely.
I learned an awful lot. So thank you.
Thank you. And I hope you get another doggy.
I will. I promise.
I'm gonna put a nice prayer of intention in the universe for you to find the perfect little friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will take it. All right, Maria. Have a good night.
Okay. God bless.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our thanks to Maria for making the time to chat with us. Special thanks to Jenna Jones at Fire Records.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Skull and Crossbones, Rattlesnake Mama, Alabama Baby, and I Will Always Love You. All of these songs can be found on the Viva Lone Justice album, which is out now. Be sure to check out the Lone Justice Bandcamp page. You can stream Lone Justice wherever you stream your favorite music. Please remember to support independent music.
original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Farina Bella,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucius Thunderlove.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.